Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast dedicated to the highs and lows of crushes from their first to their worst. We're going to cover them all with a cascade of characters, including our guest today, the former emo kid turned anxiety-ridden adult with a killer sense of humor, me. I'm finally back after a lengthy break because I recently got to attend When We Were Young, thanks to my bestest friend gifting me tickets for my birthday. So shout out to my favorite ginger for that. But yeah, this was the festival's third year, but my first time going, and those not familiar with When We Were Young, it's the retirement home of Warped Tour, that hot topic in the sky for every millennial who swore up and down to their parents that being emo wasn't a phase, and turns out a lot of them were 100% accurate because some 85,000 fans of everything from pop punk to screamo to hardcore to whatever 303 considers themselves, showed up to Las Vegas to dance to the blackest of parades. 2 days in the sun, 2 days of nostalgic realization, and 2 days wondering how many people were going to regret fishnet stockings due to some gnarly tan lines. So let's talk about it. Las Vegas makes the most sense for this type of festival, and honestly, what it still kind of has over the likes of Coachella and Stagecoach, because let's be real, what's out in the middle of that California desert? Nada. So I will give this festival a forever A+ on choosing a place and time of year that makes sense for what they're doing. I mean, a crap ton of grown adults trying desperately not to strain their bodies as they bop up and down to Simple Plan wouldn't be ideal in weather that was any hotter nor colder. So mid-October, we'll keep it. The only downside of Vegas and any town that is built around tourism is the cost of everything is heightened. $40+ to eat every day inside the festival grounds was a bit much. $9 for a churro? Is Mickey Mouse invested in this or something? Enough of me complaining about the money, because that's always my biggest issue with these types of things, which don't even get me started on Warped Tour because I'm going to save that comeback for later. For a second, let's talk about the crowds. Again, a majority of the people that go to this, myself included, are of a particular age, and the only hot thing that was waiting for all of us back in our hotel rooms was icy hot. Now, there were youth sprinkled here and there, children who somehow managed to find My Chemical Romance on the internet, fell for the mystique of Gerard Way, and somehow managed to get their parents to pay for a vacation to Las Vegas so they could attempt to stand outside for a dozen or so hours dressed as a marching band leader. Love it, love those My Chemical Romance fans. That band brought out the people. There were about 35 My Chemical Romance tees in that crowd for every non-MCRT. Not shocking, as they were the headliner. Again, they headlined the first year alongside Paramore, which I know they just did the Eras tour all summer, but personally, I would have loved Paramore over either headliner this year, but enough about the people. Nope. One more thing. To the woman who was plastered at 12:30 p.m. during Cartel set on Saturday, I hope the rest of your day went well, and you made me completely uncomfortable when you yelled in my face about my Seth Cohen tank top. But I hope you had a wonderful day and you made it back to your hotel room safely. Moving on. Let's talk about the lineup some more. Other than My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy was the other big name on the ticket, and the rest of the lineup played out like a genuine boys club with very little females in the mix. It wasn't a total sausage fest though, thanks to bands like Tonight Alive, We Are the In Crowd, Millionaires, Hey Monday, a few more, which time for another shout out. This is for We Are the In Crowd, their crowd on Sunday. The most crowd surfers I saw all weekend. It was magical, it was glorious, and I hope they tour again soon. As for the rest of my time, Cartel was fine on Saturday when I watched, but I did bounce when they had about 2 or 3 songs left. No, wasn't because of the drunk girl. I thought I was going to make it to another band, but wound up sitting and watching Under Oath. Simple Plan played what I can only imagine was a sneak peek at a future Vegas pop punk residency called something like Warped Memories. Being that this year's festival theme was centered around bands playing one album in particular, Simple Plan was going to make damn sure that nothing was left out and offered tiny bites of a number of songs on their album No Pads, No Helmets, Just Balls, but did manage to get huge sing-alongs when they busted out the more well-known hits from that record, like I'm Just a Kid, and and that other one that people really liked from Scooby-Doo, which I don't think was on the album, but they did that one. Oh, and everyone most definitely cried when they did Perfect. Well, nobody cried, I don't think. Maybe there was one person. And as much as I do feel this band is the kids' bop version of pop punk, I can't deny they know how to garner a good time from the crowd. I wish I could say more about this next band, but it breaks my heart to say that. Taking Back Sunday need to rethink their future moving forward. They were set to perform Tell All Your Friends, an album that if you had to choose 10 of the most influential in that scene, at least in a zeitgeist sort of way, that album would be in there. No doubt about that. This is also a record that is old enough to drink and has been for a year or so now. With age, as most of the crowd there knows, comes a breakdown of the body, and for Taking Back Sunday, it's a complete implosion, at least vocally. I kept reading about Adam's vocals online, but when I saw them in Columbus, I didn't really notice anything too off about it. So not the case Saturday. Adam was a hot mess, but he wasn't alone on that struggle bus. Was John sick? I don't know, but he sounded like Patient Zero in a horror movie centered around an outbreak. They were on at the same time as the starting line, and I'm glad I heard them Saturday to know to not even waste my time the following day. I hope I wasn't the only one who figured that out, though. I'm also happy I couldn't locate the VIP entrance over where Taking Back Sunday was playing, or else I wouldn't have gotten such a good spot for the band that owned my heart at 17, The Used. Because this was my favorite moment of the weekend, I decided to write about The Used, and you can check that out at crushgasmpodcast.com and read about why that band still has the power to illuminate my heart, and why In Love and Death is an album that, upon hearing it live for the first time in a very long time, made me tear up a little bit. After The Used, I wandered alone for a bit, sifting through the crowd, sitting where I could, consuming delicious pupusas when the opportunity arose. Third shout out, the pupusa stand, so good. I would have eaten a dozen if I could have afforded such pleasure in this world. By the end of night one, I added Newfound Glory, who are always a good time, Fall Out Boy, who opted to do more of an Eras type set list. I wasn't a fan after a certain point and left to try to get a somewhat decent spot for My Chemical Romance, and they did not disappoint, and they proved why they became the poster boys for this genre of sadness. Before we get into that, let's get to Sunday really quick, because there were only 2 swaps I did. I went over to watch the starting line and Motion City soundtrack instead of questioning my life with Taking Back Sunday and getting too emotional over The Used again. So find out more about The Used and why I was emotional at crushgasmpodcast.com. The starting line, not one disappointment with them, sounded great. They were like a kid on the honor roll, expectations met. Motion City soundtrack, another straight A student that left me with 0 complaints. But back to My Chemical Romance, and I don't say this as like a number 1 fan. I was really into them for a while back in the day, but as the years went by, when I'd go back and listen to them, I'd often find them a bit, I don't want to say over the top, but whenever they randomly came on after a certain point, I felt like, girl, what were you into as a wide-eyed 18-year-old with nothing but a fast check in one hand and a flip phone in the other? And I'd have to tell myself, girl, you are not okay. Were any of us, though? I had a 3.5-hour plane ride back home to think about that. Some 85,000 people came to Las Vegas to relive a time in their lives when they were just flared jean wearing AIM warriors of the night trying to survive high school. Now they're 20 or so years older, and it's interesting how nostalgic this generation is, and I'm not sure we've started to unlock the reason why. Because my mom doesn't sit around and talk to her friends ad nauseum about the Monkees, the Waltons, or how you could smoke inside once upon a time. She stays present and she pushes forward. She always has. Gen X has a bit of nostalgia because they had the pop culture boom of the 80s. VHS tapes, they took movies to a new level while MTV was taking music to the moon. Plus, don't mention Nirvana around someone from that generation and not expect a when, where, why, and how recollection of the day Kurt Cobain left this earth. Millennials were worse though, and I know I'm part of the problem and can be a bit much, so perhaps that's why I didn't laugh at all when My Chemical Romance brought their mall goth theatrics to the stage either night. There are two sort of rock bands I consider millennial coded. Linkin Park is the first. They are the band that bridged the gap between nu metal and emo music. Chester's guttural vocals match with those very earnest lyrics. You'd think that they'd saved Christmas. Millennials definitely got that joke. The emotion Linkin Park set out on display set up the mentally unstable millennials to fall for My Chemical Romance, and fall hard we did. There's nothing in me that can nor will lie when I say that I'm Not Okay is one of the most perfect and defining songs of the 2000s. But for some reason, My Chem's Black Parade became their bat signal in the emo realm. And that is what they performed both nights in full, and they did so masterfully. All day, the screen showcasing the ongoings of on stage were strange to me. As they edited the shots to look like some sort of Y2K Mountain Dew commercial during the X Games. Very odd. For My Chemical Romance, though, very little nonsense, just an eerie black and white motif with moments of spooky, because with this band, there is going to be spooky whether you want it or not. They did the Black Parade justice, and for the younger fans who went, I hope you enjoyed hearing it live for the first time and seeing Gerard Way be just... That's a front man. I mean... I find that dude to be very strange in real life, but when he gets on that stage, that's a born performer. No notes, just perfection. Mwah. I also gotta say, hearing some 85,000 people scream I'm Not Okay weeks before one of the most critical and crucial elections in U.S. history was, well, it was something. And really quick, this is a side note, my favorite thing about live music is when the artist, the band, whoever's on stage, the music stops and just the crowd sings. It's just like there's something therapeutic about it. There's something surreal, because for this crowd, 85,000 people screaming I'm Not Okay, perhaps some of us were not okay for the same reason, but in reality, that could be 85,000 different reasons. These people are screaming along to this song or singing along all day, all weekend, in fact, and I think that might have been one of my favorite things, the sing-alongs, because you kind of can be like, wow, when I was 16, this song meant that much to me too. And that's the connection you find in music, people, and that's the beauty of it all. So the festival was fine. I feel like overpricing things, though, there needs to be a reasonable middle of the road for fans and bands, because let's be real, at some point these bands aren't going to be able to continue to do this. Heck, we heard a prime example from one of the main stage acts just this year in regards to a band that may want to retire their LimeWire Classic, because touring is hard on the body, the mind, the vocals, all the above. And these bands, as much as they helped raise a generation, they themselves aren't getting any younger. If we thought we were going to overdo it with the Tylenol just watching, imagine how they were feeling having to exert themselves performing. So one has to wonder how long this festival can continue, and just how long they can get fans to continue to want to go when aging cannot be stopped for anyone involved. I think that is why Warped Tour started sniffing around again, and since I have you, can I give you my thoughts on this so-called comeback? It's like when we were young. It's nostalgia bait opportunity, but not as good, because at least with When We Were Young, the shtick is these are older bands and fans who spent their younger years at Warped Tour, a summer-long affordable festival. Now they want to bring it back over the course of only 3 weekends and 3 cities: Las Vegas, Long Beach, and Orlando, for $150 for a weekend pass. There is a myriad of issues here. 1, there is no tour here. This is technically Coachella on the go. 2, the cost. How many young people can actually go to this? When I was 18, I went for the first time because I had some money left over from my graduation gifts. $150, that would have broke the bank up throughout my 20s. I don't think so. Plus the cost of travel, lodging, all that jazz is too much. 3, this is my biggest problem. Are younger people even the target here? With the cost, I don't think so. And that's a shame because Warped Tour for me holds some of my favorite memories. It was the one guarantee I had after high school that I could go to every summer, and where most of the people I like now, most of the friends I have, it's where we'd convene in the summer months with music and egg rolls. It'd be wonderful to see Warped Tour come back the way it was and not be only for older people like myself, but for younger people, and to be $40 a ticket all summer long. Had a few larger acts in the mix, but it was filled up with more up and coming, more like mid-tier bands so that a new generation could put their own stamp on this genre and allow it to grow without it being the same bands from 20, 30, 50. Like, it's too much. Also, how are promoters going to have nostalgia in the future if they don't give them nothing of their own now? See, I'm like anxiety and Inside Out. I'm planning for the future. So when we were young, 2024, it was a good time. I think some bands might want to think about taking some time off, while others, I encourage you to make new music. I love spending a weekend feeling 17 again, but it felt wonderful to go home and be 37 once more. So tour and I'll go. Come to Columbus. Well, that's all I have to say about this. And Warped Tour, start focusing on the now. Live in the present so in the future you can nostalgia bait again. But until then, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me recap when we were young. And everyone, you can find all of Crushgasm's information below. And until next time, as always, keep crushing it. Crushgasm is part of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network, along with some other pretty cool shows, including An Evening at the Movies, Crime Rewind, Literature Reapers, Love is Black, Masturbators, Men Are the Prize, Season to Season, The Sip List, and Toontastic Journeys. You can go to idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com to find not only Crushgasm, but all of the aforementioned really cool podcasts. Alrighty.